fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Hey there, fellow travelers. It's me, the Hotel Whiz. Before you go anywhere, call me day or night for hotel rates too low to publish. I'll save you up to 75% on over 500,000 hotels across the globe. You see, I've already done the research, so you don't have to spend time online trying to find the best deal. That's up to 75% off. Just call me, the Hotel Whiz. It's a free call, and you get instant access to rates too low to publish with no cancellation fees.
Make a free call now and save up to 75% off your hotel rooms the next time you're going somewhere for business or pleasure. Call the Hotel Whiz now and get instant access to rates too low to publish. 800-378-2714. 800-378-2714. 800-378-2714. Call the Hotel Whiz right now for rates too low to publish. 800-378-2714.
Looking for everything happening in and around Central Virginia that used to be in the morning paper? Start your day at the LynchburgPortal.com. Get the latest news updates from Bill Trevero, plus up-to-date weather from VTRN's own in-house meteorologist, Matt Ferguson. So you're always in the know before you head out the door. Want to listen on the go? Stream classic hits on Rewind 103.9. Get breaking local news on WIQO, or catch the best sports talk and play-by-play on VTRN Sports, powered by ESPN Radio, all right from the portal. Looking to save? Check out insane radio deals for great local discounts, or explore local podcasts featuring the voices and stories that make our community special. Plus, connect with local businesses through the Lynchburg Business Alliance directory and stay in the loop on the latest events from Lynchburg Tourism. It's all right here. Local news, weather, sports, deals, and more at the LynchburgPortal.com. Your gateway to everything Lynch.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
How many more of these are we going to have in the fast lane? I don't know. Find out, but here we go.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
Snow days. I totally get the logic behind them. The roads are just now drivable in the area, Lynchburg, which is where we're based, and the majority of my sales calls take place in the greater Lynchburg area. They're just now drivable on secondary streets. It depends on your car, but for the most part, it's navigable. Certainly in large commercial areas. It's amazing how if you have a commercial center and you have money, it's like built into your budget. So, commercial shopping centers, a lot of those are clean because, well, we need people to come in to spend money so that they can pay their rent. That's how it works. Do I sound cynical? Perhaps. But again, these are the type of lessons nobody tells you at school, but then you get confronted with in the real world. And that's when you're like, oh, this is how it is. The only difference between my house and most parents' houses is that my kids are just going to get an understanding of this early as possible. It doesn't mean money needs to be your God. I'm a Christian, so for the love of money is the root of all evil. But money itself is a necessary thing. And this is part of what happens. So with all that being said, my wife is finding this out now. There was a period of time where she was selling real estate and for whatever that's worth, and she was doing other ventures, and she had a more flexible schedule. Now she's getting to live the world that I am, where your schedule gets inconvenienced. You have to totally throw things out of whack. Your job does not care about the snow day excuse. They expect you to be there and to perform on schedule. And that's the nature of our job at the Virginia Talk Radio Network, and it's the nature of other jobs. It's just that I tell my kids this, and the biggest challenge we encounter with snow days is that, for one, I am not a stick the tablet in your child's face type of parent so that you can get quiet time. I'll let them have it for some, but I am trying to make sure that they control the screen time, not that the screen time controls you. Because too often in life, including in our house, the screen time can control the person, and it becomes a real challenge. biggest way to hack that, by the way, is to disable push notifications from like social media sites, apps. I have, outside of text messages, and even if it's a group thread outside of our company one with TJ, Ty, and Trey, every other group text, I mute. I'll get to it when I get to it, but I don't need a bunch of them going all at once. I don't need push notifications from every site. I get it if you're listening and your business wants them, and it's good for your business to have me have push notifications, but I don't need it because I have enough distractions and things that I need. And it goes back to my point of you control the device, the tablet, the screen, not it controls you. And so I'm with my kids, and there are times where they use that, but there are times where it's you're going to have to find a way to have fun with each other, get along around the house, engage in activities. It can be reading, it can be playing together. We'll take chunks of time where you can have screen time, and then there are going to be chunks where it's play outside, do other stuff. But it is challenging because one of my sons, his love language, and I don't know all the 5 love languages. I know there's the book out there for it. Confession for a moment here in the fast lane. I probably should read it, but again, maybe I'll find the time to do it at some point. One of mine, I can tell, is connected time together. And when I'm trying to work from home, it is real hard to give connected time together to that child when I am physically at home, but my time and energy are not focused on connected time with the child. And every effort he may make, whether it's just simple questions to, getting in trouble with his brother because he craves that, it takes away my ability to function normally. So then when I leave the house, all of a sudden, I have to spend more time getting the things done that I wanted to get done at home, but could not because the time was constantly distracted and hijacked by 2 7.5-year-old boys. And I love them to death. It's great. They're doing great with their missed work assignments at school. And I think it's an awesome thing that Lynchburg City Schools has where there's an education packet and you can continue to work with your kids through all of these snow days. Although the one thing I will say is that first Friday in December when there was like a 30% chance of snow for like 11 a.m., 12 a.m., and 1 p.m., or 11 a.m., noon, and 1 p.m., and they canceled school the day before, even though the temperature was in the mid-30s when it was going to happen. Like, I think you'd like to have had that day back. That's probably one where you got to go, bad call. But the rest of them have largely made sense. But it becomes a challenge. So if I'm distracted, if I'm upset, if I'm cranky the next couple days in the fast lane, we'll get through this. Eventually we will. Everything happens according to God's time and plan. But I am also a human being who has challenges dealing with this and is highly competitive. And all distractions ultimately can throw me out of the way of being competitive because here's the other news flash. This is a great situation to be in. But when you go out in public, often you bump into people that are fans of the fast lane, fans of what we do at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. And it's great. We're thankful for you. We're grateful to have the impact. But it does mean that they all take that time away, which can take time away from jobs and family. So time has to come from somewhere. And it's the most finite, challenging thing to have. And during a snow day, when it's already being compromised, it's much more stressful than during I'll use air quotes here, but normal flow of life. So
after Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
I know I sounded like I was up in arms, but if there's one group of people out there that I would say deservedly are more up in arms, TJ, it is the Bill Belichick should be in the Hall of Fame category of people. File this under news that broke during the fast lane yesterday, and I didn't have time to react to it at that moment. And to get my usher on again, I wanted to take a moment to process and digest the information. So it's not urgent to our area. We could afford to wait. We did. And I finally did a TroastLaw.com fast take on it earlier today, where maybe you heard my kids and my dogs joyously playing outside in the background. It was awesome seeing them sled down the backyard, playing in the snow, all the fun things that they get to do being out in nature. Again, I'm critical a lot, but count my blessings in that area. That's awesome. But in the middle of doing that, it was largely about this principle. So once upon a time, I was in the camp, and Mike Barber of SeavilleRightNow.com or SeavilleNow.com, he's often in the morning warm up with Trey Lyle.
And guess what? We keep receiving.
You can listen back to interviews there. But he and I were in the category of Buzz Williams, no ACC Coach of the Year. It's close to Jim Larinaga, and media availability and accessibility is a priority. And Buzz is Team Buzz. He was never Team Virginia Tech. They're finding out now in Maryland. He's not really Team Maryland. They found out at Marquette and Texas A&M as well. But Buzz Williams is Team Buzz not any other team. He watches out for number one, and there's not really any other example of it. I'll give him credit, though. He's just blunt about it. But when he was around, I was one who was like, it taints my ability to vote for him for ACC Basketball Coach of the Year. In hindsight, I'd probably do it differently. I probably would have voted for him because I've gotten to the point now where my consideration for accolades can be honoring someone for whatever they've achieved while being mindful of the flaws that popped up. File this under the, if you want people to talk good about you at your funeral / memorial, or I'll say this again. We suck in the white community at this. Like, we call it funerals and memorials. It sounds so morbid. In the African-American community, they're much better at this. They call it homegoing services or celebrations of life. I think it's fantastic. It puts a much more optimistic spin on it. And frankly, if you're a believer in Christ, I am. You don't have to be. It's a free country. But I am. Then, it kind of is a reward. You're done on earth. You're going to a better place. Like, you really are. We have to mourn here on earth about your departure. Probably is painful when the time comes. Not looking to find out anytime soon. But I'd imagine when you take your final breath, it's got to be a little scary when that time comes. But when you look at it from that standpoint, how people talk about you at your homegoing celebration of life, or if you want to be morbid, funeral memorial service, is determined by how you carry yourself. I think it's the same way when it comes to accolades for coaches, for players, and recognition. And Bill Belichick is just the latest example of this. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I get it. Tom Brady had success without Bill Belichick. And let's be real, Bill Belichick really has not had a lot of success without Tom Brady. I know people point to the Matt Castle year, but the post-Brady time in New England, not so good. The pre-Brady time, by and large, in Cleveland in particular, granted, again, it was a mess with the Modell family looking to leave, so there's some asterisks there. But they also had a loaded coaching staff. Go back and look at the NFL Network documentary on that. Saban was on it. Kirk Ferentz was on it. Jim Schwartz was on that. There were a lot of brilliant football minds that were on that. And yet they struggled with the win-loss perspective. But Bill Belichick still managed to win 6 Super Bowls. He is still, in spite of all those negative parts, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Yes, there's Deflategate and Spygate, which to me are largely, it's like speeding tickets. And, the way Bill Belichick handled Deflategate and Spygate is like not pulling over when the officer has the flashing lights because you rolled the stop light or rolled the stop sign, or you ran the yellow that was probably a red light, or you were going 70 and a 55. Like, you're going to get written up for it. But the odds are, if you just pull over, it's really not going to be that big of a deal and people aren't going to remember it. I think a lot of the reason people remember Deflategate and Spygate is this, I have an axe to grind me against the world, so I'm going to create that level of friction that, again, we reference Ray Harper at Jacksonville State. I think he thrives on it. I think Bill Belichick does too. This, me against the world mentality. And so I get that. But in spite of all that, Bill Belichick is still a Hall of Fame caliber coach, and therefore, I think deserves to get into the Hall of Fame. And if you want to put an asterisk beside his Hall of Fame and say, there was Spygate, there was Deflategate, he was difficult and still is at North Carolina to deal with when it comes to the media. I think that's all very reasonable and part of telling his story. Much like, I think in baseball, you should have the Hall of Fame consisting of a Barry Bonds, a Mark McGwire, a Sammy Sosa, a Roger Clemens, among others. And just put in there the bad that's part of them as well. They were alleged to have been involved in performance-enhancing drugs. They had multiple allegations, and there were a lot of outside sources that proved it. Mitchell Report, Balco investigations, everything else. To me, TJ, I've reformed my thought. Instead of holding it against a coach or a player, I'd rather just go ahead and give them the reward, but go ahead and tell everybody till the end of time, here's where their flaw was. Let's go ahead and be mindful of it because, honestly, this is part of their legacy as well.
Absolutely. I think what gets me is there are no former players that are allowed to vote in the Hall of Fame. It's all strictly media. And I understand to the most part. But do you remember when Terrell Owens had to wait 3 extra years because why couldn't he be in the Hall of Fame? The quote unquote, his attitude.
Yeah.
Why are we letting media members with, and I'll include myself in this, if I get my feelings hurt easily because Bill Belichick didn't want to answer my question at UNC and UVA, why am I voting to put him in the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
Bill Belichick is the first ballot Hall of Famer. And a lot of media members that aren't voting will tell you that. Tom Brady came out on a radio show and even discussed that. And there's been supposed beef with them since he left New England. Tom Brady is backing up Bill Belichick. And I guarantee you, if Robert Kraft were in the room, he would agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I can understand why that's the case. Yeah. And again, I can get why Bill Belichick and his backers would be in that camp of being upset at how this is all unfolded. And again, to get our usher on, we've had a great relationship with Michael Lombardi, the North Carolina Tar Heels general manager. So to just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Critical as we can be of his performance, it was not good. The on-field product for Carolina for the majority of this year. And if they don't perform well this year, I think more scrutiny is deserved. But when you look at this right now in the Hall of Fame voting process, you bring up a great point, TJ. Have former coaches, executives, and players on that. Because for every Bill Polian who allegedly, I think we need to remember this, he's denied it, Bill Polian has, former Colts president. But a lot of people have said he went on record and campaigned against Bill Belichick because of Deflategate and Spygate. Yeah. And yes, the Colts were a victim of it. Granted, I think just let's be real here. I know Peyton Manning has his defenders, but Tom Brady was better than Peyton Manning. Yeah. Like when Brady was thrown off the game plan, he wasn't so robotic he struggled to adjust the way that Peyton Manning was. Manning's one of the greatest of all time. Manning's personality has bailed him out a little more. People love him because of the Manning cast. But if you're looking objectively, what Manning has done is different than what Tom Brady has done. And so I think you have to keep that in mind. But the other one is Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson was held against him, and he has gone scorched earth on the idea of Bill Belichick not making the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Johnson, it took him a while to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And he is, again, based on my knowledge of people with whom I've spoken, and again, I've tried to reach out to him. I don't think he's in the Warren Sapp category because, while it didn't go well trying to get a hold of Jimmy Johnson, he didn't block us like Warren Sapp allegedly has. Yeah. Actually, Warren Sapp has. We have the receipts at Fastlane Headline on Twitter to prove it.
Oh, wait, what's the soundbite?
Yes. But Jimmy Johnson was by and large deemed to be one of the most arrogant coaches that were out there.
Yeah.
He has the receipts to back it up in terms of overall what he did.
And guess what? We keep receipts.
He won a championship at Miami and told his wife he didn't.
Yeah.
He's very cocky.
I mean, exactly. You're 100% right. He left her because he needed to focus more on the Dallas Cowboys, and his wife was getting in the way of it. Never mind that there are plenty of coaches' wives that can handle the fact that their spouse is by and large MIA for a good chunk of the year during football season in particular. Go ask a high school football coach and their wife, even assistant coaches. You've been around them before. Yeah. Granted, a lot of them have lives outside of the year, but there are plenty of them where during football season, they and their spouses know what they're getting into.
We should call JT Cruz right now.
We could get his. We could get Frank Rocco's. Yeah. I think most of the coaches in the area are probably all in the camp. And again, to get my usher on for a second here in the fast lane, my wife coaches field hockey. And from August through October, we're kind of like ships passing in the night a lot of the time. I get it. Not to the same level. But Jimmy Johnson had that arrogance to him. And most players, Kelvin Harris, friend of ours in the fast lane who was on with us to preview the national title game, has even gone about saying that Jimmy Johnson played the psychological manipulation game. And in spite of the fact that that's the case, that by and large he's treated the majority of the media like he doesn't need them, that can again be part of his overall relationship and how people remember him. That he is both Hall of Fame worthy based on resume, and when people talk about these individuals, including when they're no longer on this earth and God takes them away, however that is and whenever that happens to be, and I'm not wishing it on anyone, you can still talk bad about people. I don't mind it. But I think in the pantheon of a Hall of Fame, essentially, it should be based on what you've accomplished. And if people think there's an asterisk for Deflategate or Spygate, never mind that people have used those before. Or if there's an asterisk because of performance-enhancing substances. Anything unless it compromises the integrity of the game, and P. Rose to me is in a different category. Betting on games, particularly if they involve your team as a coach or manager, can literally compromise the integrity of the game. It can compromise is this product legitimate? Everything else is designed to still be the best you can be. It may not be within the rules. I think you can bring that up, but you're not trying to deliberately compromise the quality of the product. You are doing what you believe is the best you can, even breaking the rules, but the best you can to perform at the highest level. There's a sport in NASCAR where if you wanted to go through their Hall of Fame in NASCAR about what they've done in terms of doctoring their cars up to try to get a competitive advantage, like Spygate or Deflategate or PEDs, there would be no one in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Nobody.
No.
Nobody. First of all, it's a sport founded on running from the law. Moonshiners running from the law. Racing as fast as you can, building cars that can outrun the cops. So let's keep that in mind. But in NASCAR, Larry McReynolds has said it best. He's been in the fast lane plenty of times. NASCAR on Fox analyst, among other outlets. Former crew chief for a number of teams, most notably Dale Earnhardt Jr. when he won the Daytona 500. And he's basically said, I'd be lying if I didn't say we were always looking for an edge, always up against that line, and oftentimes we were crossing that line. If you want to hold that against a coach, fine. But put him in the Hall of Fame and then just bring that up as part of his resume and let people then debate whether or not that is a part of his resume that deserves to be debated.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, Bill Belichick won 6 championships with the New England Patriots. I've given the asterisk of, was it Brady or Belichick? But Brady didn't coach the defense. Brady didn't have a role in all those other areas.
No.
And you have to also keep that in mind with Bill Belichick that, yes, I think Brady may have done a little more for Belichick, but it's not like Brady was only there alone the entire time. Belichick did a lot while there was just not a lot of talent around Tom Brady on offense to still keep them as a consistent 10 to 11 win team that was routinely making deep runs into the playoffs. And that's not just player, it's also Hall of Fame caliber coach.
They won with wide receivers that weren't superstar talent, but they ended up winning a Super Bowl still. Something that the Bills failed to do with Josh Allen this year with those.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's something the Bills failed to do. It's something a lot of teams have failed to do with high-end talent. And that's, often what you do with less shows me more about your acumen. And Bill Belichick has been a master at coaching and schematics and X's and O's. You can argue about his talent evaluation assessments. I think those are very understandable and reasonable. And I think that's Brady's strength, is masking the fact that I don't know if the Patriots were great at talent evaluation, particularly the Bill Belichick talent evaluation piece. And this isn't just the Michael Lombardi in North Carolina part. This is whoever else he was working with the New England Patriots. But the fact of the matter is, in spite of that, he still managed to coach around his own deficiencies as a talent evaluator to be a better performing coach than what you would normally get out of the not so good talent that he managed to put in place.
I will say this. I think if Julian Edelman goes to any other team, he's not considered Hall of Fame.
Agreed. I would absolutely agree with that. Rob Gronkowski. Would Rob Gronkowski have been a glorified tight end, or was he somebody that was Hall of Fame worthy because of what he did at that time? And, there's so many things right now, but the idea of he shouldn't be a unanimous, first team all Hall of Fame. I mean, you are or you're not. And at some point, there's a level of common sense that goes into this.
There are a lot of players that coaches I'm surprised aren't first ballot. But I think not putting Bill Belichick first ballot is the craziest thing to me, which is why, again, I think if players voted, there would be players that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame that aren't. Like most of the Hogs for the Washington Commanders, a team outside of our backyard. That Hogs O-line, before there was Larry Allen, there was Russ Grimm and Joe Jacoby.
All of them. Yeah. There were so many others. And, this is why football is the sport that I think we love the most in our country. Number one, it's scarcity of product. There's only so many football games we can have. Let's not kid ourselves. Scarcity of product means you still go through the majority of the year without meaningful football games. You've got them in September, October, November, December, January, and then one game in February, which, by the way, you'll be able to hear on the VTR and Sports app and the Virginia Talk Radio Network next Sunday, 2 o'clock airtime. But the majority of the months, let's go with most of February, March, April, May, June, July, August. That's 7 months, no football. 5 months, football, and 1 in February. You're getting more time without football than you are with it. So that's the number one reason. But another thing is, it's the ultimate team game. In basketball, you can have one dynamic scorer that can just carry you. And granted, you actually need 2 or 3 in the NBA, but there's certain players on the team you may not need. In hockey, great goaltender, but you also need some good team players there. I think it's probably the second most, but the lack of scarcity taints it. Baseball, you can have a couple of good pitchers and some good hitters, and before the Dodgers were doing what they were doing, it might be enough to get you to a World Series championship. In football, there's so many key pieces. You can have a Mahomes, you can have a Brady, but you still need to have great defensive players. You still need other coaches to get the max out of them. And if you don't have them, you need a good offensive line, a good defensive line. You're looking at 10, 12 guys just on those units, much less the supporting around it. And that's where people can relate to it and where football is a team game. And to get all these parts moving in place, you do have to have a little bit of confidence. Most of the good coaches have an unabashed level of confidence to a certain extent in their system and approach. How they convey it is different. For every Tony Dungy, there is a Belichick or a Jimmy Johnson. There are certain degrees to which you do. But ultimately, your performance should dictate whether you're in the Hall of Fame and the awards that you get. And you can do that while also mentioning the flaws of that individual throughout their entire time because it's all part of their body of work. Meanwhile, when we return to the Fast Lane, we'll pivot off of this. Chris Coleman of TechSideline.com on the schedule release for the Virginia Tech Hokies. And we'll also touch on a couple of other things in the Fast Five at 5-ish and fan feedback after we chat with Chris Coleman. But thank you for braving with us like we've braved these elements here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app and Ask That Smart Speaker, open VTRN Sports.
A cool food concept sparks curiosity. What about two concepts at one restaurant? That's even better. Oliver's on Rivermont is Lynchburg's first multi-concept restaurant. Pick items from the traditional Oliver's menu, the 801 Raw Bar menu, or mix and match. And you'll appreciate the consistency of Oliver's new kitchen and serving staff. Two cool concepts in one. Only available at Oliver's on Rivermont.
I take care of the kids, and I take care of my dad. I take care of things at work. The groceries, the cleanups, the meltdowns, the doctor's visits, the family events, mealtimes, bedtimes. I take care of all the things everyone else needs. But I haven't made time to take care of what I need.
Family caregivers are often overloaded. It can feel overwhelming and exhausting. It's no surprise that millions of caregivers experience symptoms of anxiety and depression every year. But help is available because there may only be one you, but you don't have to do it alone. Head to mentalhealthcareworks.org. That's mentalhealthcareworks.org to learn how to get the support you deserve. Because mental health care works when you make the call. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or thoughts of suicide, dial 988, a message from the American Psychiatric Association Foundation.
New year can mean new changes in your life. But you know what will never change? The great deals that you get on InsaneRadioDeals.com. And we don't just feed your taste buds, but we feed your adventurous side, your hobbies, your interests, with great rates on Rise Up climbing passes, Aquatrek Adventures, and Cross-White Athletics Club. Or if you're a sports nerd like me, we've got gift certificates for a SeaOfRed.com and B&C Sports located at River Ridge Mall. All this and more at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
The Virginia Talk Radio Network reaches more people than any other Lynchburg-based media company. Call Melinda at 434-534-8500. Let us tell your story.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
You already know it if you've listened to the Fast Lane earlier, Fast Lane Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts, because
and guess what? We keep receipts
right there. But getting my usher on for a moment, I have read Chris Coleman's article at TechSideline.com with his observations on the Virginia Tech schedule. I have not quite read his latest player article, one on the tight end room. I'm very intrigued because of the family ties to Jarekus Hairston, whose dad, Curtis, was my color announcer when I broadcast high school football games in Martinsville and Bassett, Virginia, back in the South Side area. So just a little nugget for you today in the Fast Lane. But I have not listened to either of the two latest TSL podcasts, whether it's Talking with Teal or the one that the TSL crew did on the schedule release. But I agree with Chris Coleman of TechSideline.com, who joins us now in the Fast Lane, that while you may not like the idea of Friday night football games, the Virginia Tech Hokies have three of them that could be on the schedule, two guaranteed, Pitt and Miami on the road, Pitt at home to open ACC play, and potentially a Friday night game at SMU. But there's an obvious reason why these are the case, as Kenny Powers will remind us.
Dollar bills, y'all.
So Chris Coleman is with us now in the Fast Lane. First of all, Chris, we hope and pray you and yours are well. Second of all, am I oversimplifying that the volume of Friday night football games in the ACC, in short, comes down to the Kenny Powers axiom of
dollar bills, y'all?
Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a huge part of it. I mean, even before the new system of how the money is distributed, you were seeing more and more Friday night games in the ACC. There's only so many time slots to go around, and you know, the ESPN has also got the SEC. Obviously, those are going to take up a number of them, but I think now specifically, when you look up and down the lineup of those Friday night games this year, you see a whole lot of Miami's and Florida State's and Louisville's and Virginia Tech's, major ACC brands. And, in some of those cases, they'll be playing against each other. So like Miami and Wake Forest, I think, is a Friday night game. Well, that's a game that if it was played on a Saturday, might not get like an ESPN or ABC game. It might be an ESPN2 game or something like that because of the stature of Wake Forest. But you put it on a Friday night and then it becomes a nationally televised ESPN game. And, those ESPN and ABC games just, they draw a lot more viewers and, therefore a lot more money. And then if you get one of those games, obviously, with the new rules in the ACC, the schools that play in it get more money. So, I definitely think it's a concerted effort to get those big brands on Friday nights as much as possible.
Chris Coleman, TSL, his personal Twitter, of course, techsideline.com or just techsideline on your socials to keep up with them as well. We're at Fastlane Edlane on ours, including wherever you listen to podcasts. For you, it is always be redshirting. That has been one of your big mantras, Chris. Mine is going to be utilize week 0 until everybody does it. I know it's not on the schedule this year for Virginia Tech, but if you're talking about exclusive windows with more TV access and in a time-starved spot where people are craving football, and oddly enough, a Virginia-North Carolina State game might rate pretty well when it normally wouldn't, shouldn't Virginia Tech be banging the drum as well to get more of those games as well on their schedule?
I mean, I definitely think that would be a possibility. I think the ACC schedule that we know is scrapped after this year. I think they're going to reset everything now that the 9-game schedule is in. So I think, what was originally scheduled for 2027 is going to be invalid. All years past 2027, I think we're going to see something new coming out. I don't know the date on that or anything, but I'll be interested to see how they handle week 0 or even week 1. This past year, Virginia Tech and South Carolina, week 1 is the week before the NFL starts. So you've got that Sunday window also in week 1, and Virginia Tech played South Carolina this past year on Sunday. And, it was a pretty well-viewed game because of it. So that's another possibility early in the season.
Chris Coleman with us here in the Fast Lane. We're just exploring all sorts of possibilities for Virginia Tech. Everyone knew that VMI was going to be the opener for Virginia Tech. It finally comes out on the schedule that that's in fact the case. Does it dampen down your enthusiasm for it now that you officially know that that's the opener, or is it still, hey, it's James Franklin's first game, we're still excited to see where this thing goes?
A little bit of both. I'm a little bit sheepish to be playing VMI. Not only are they an FCS program, but they're, to take nothing away from those guys, tremendous amount of respect. You got to be really dedicated to play football and be in a military environment. It's just like going to Army or Navy or anything like that. But they are one of the worst FCS football programs, and so it's a little bit embarrassing from that standpoint. But at the same time, Virginia Tech fans for a while now have needed something to feel good about, and it's a guaranteed win, of course, and you can leave the stadium happy with a 50 or 60 point win, and with the whole season to look forward to. Virginia Tech easily just passed Wofford, who was a really bad team this past year, but you couldn't really enjoy it because you knew Tech wasn't good. They were just 1-3 at that point. They didn't have a head coach, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be nice to start off a little bit stress-free, get an easy win, and then have the whole season to look forward to.
Chris, you brought up the reality of VMI, and I mean, look, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure this one out, that Virginia Tech will win that game very comfortably, barring they just flat out literally do not show up to the game on that one.
Yep.
But is there an element of Virginia Tech maybe adopting the model that Indiana has done, where it's just scheduled patsies completely in their limited amount of non-conference games? Or can you afford to do that when you're in the ACC, knowing that, look, there's some challenging games, but it doesn't have the reputational pull of the bigger conferences?
Yeah, it's this balancing act. Everybody wants to make the playoffs these days, but you don't want to challenge yourself too much in your non-conference schedule. You get knocked off in one of those games, and maybe it keeps you out of the playoffs. But on the other hand, a really high-profile non-conference game, gets you one of those great time slots on ESPN or ABC, and you make a lot of money from it, right? So that there's some difficult choices to be made for sure. But that's not just Virginia Tech. That's every ACC school. Maybe it's not maybe not so much of an issue for Clemson because they've already played in South Carolina to end the season. To end the season is a big non-conference game, so they're already getting some TV revenue from that, of course, and so there's really no need, I don't think, to challenge themselves in non-conference at the beginning of the season. But for other schools that don't have that out-of-conference rivalry like Virginia Tech, some tough decisions will have to be made.
What's the part of the Virginia Tech schedule that you like the most, and why?
I think they've got a chance to get off to a good start. I think all 7 of those games are very winnable. Will they win them all? Unlikely, but I think they'll start at least 5-2. I really do, and it's been since 2019 since Virginia Tech started a season 5-2, and even that season, one of those 2 losses was that awful Duke loss on a Friday night that Virginia Tech came back the next week and beat Miami, which made the Duke loss even more inexplicable, right? So it's been a long time since Virginia Tech fans have really been able to enjoy the start to a season. I just want to feel like you have a puncher's chance in heading into the latter stages of October. And in the latter stages of October, this year starts with the Clemson game, I believe, on October 24th. I just want to feel like you still have a chance. There's still something to be played, still something that you're playing for at that point in the season. And I feel like that opportunity presents itself this year.
Chris, I really appreciate your dancing around the fact that you're basically saying you want to have some hope, but we beep that word out because hope is not a good plan here in the fast lane. So that's why we say hope as opposed to actually saying it. But you bring up that point. The flip side to that is there are always elements of the schedule where you go, not as keen on that one. What jumps out to you in that regard?
I think when you look at the latter stages of the schedule, it's very difficult. You're at Miami, you're at Louisville, you're at Clemson. We'll see if Virginia can repeat what they did last year, but on paper, the back end of the schedule is a lot more difficult. A road trip to Cal in the first half of the season could be difficult. But, we sit here and talk about this stuff every year, but everybody's roster changes over so much that, I don't think anybody would have predicted Wake Forest to win 9 games this year, right? And I don't think anybody would have predicted Florida State to win 2 games the year before that. I don't think anybody would have predicted Duke to play such consistent football over the last 4 years. So it's really hard to predict things these days. So, who would have had Duke versus Virginia in the ACC title game this past season? So with as much as the rosters change over these days, we're talking about very early looks here, and I'm just talking I'm just basing my views off the reputation of teams because, honestly, you can barely keep up with the comings and goings of Virginia Tech's players these days. I don't know what's going on at Cal. I don't know what's going on at Pitt, and places like that. I don't know how good those teams are going to be. They probably don't know either because those guys, a bunch of new players just arriving on campus. You've still got to gel and everything like that. So there's just a lot more unknown to it these days than there has been in the past.
No doubt there is, and that's the reality of it. It'll make for fun speculation as we head throughout the offseason with you, with David Cunningham, or with anybody else who cares to join us. We enjoy them all from TechSideline.com as Chris Coleman is with us today here in the Fast Lane, and we're at Fast Lane, Ed Lane. They're at Tech Sideline on the socials and wherever you listen to podcasts if you miss anything. Chris, we'll pivot over from that to basketball. Last night against Georgia Tech. Is this a reasonable assessment from your view as it is from ours listening to Virginia Tech basketball on the VTRN Sports app? That it never felt like they were dominating Georgia Tech, but it always felt like they did enough to keep them at arm's length the entire game.
Yeah, when you consider at one point it was 9-0 Georgia Tech, they just came out and made 3 straight 3-point shots and then didn't make any the rest of the game, I don't believe. You thought they were a little bit blitzkrieg, but at the same time, Virginia Tech's the better team, and most likely they would end up taking control of the game. So, when Tech got up by 15 at one point, at that point they had outscored Georgia Tech by 24 since that 9-0 start by the Yellow Jackets. So They were definitely in control, and if you throw out the 9-0 start, they were blowing them out. Obviously, they didn't close the game very well, but that's a topic of conversation that we can have after pretty much every win these days.
You mentioned the not closing out well for Virginia Tech basketball. Little picture is the first one is not closing it out. Does it scratch your head at all that they actually they're great at free throw shooting, but whether it's that or little things down the road, it's like they're great at it for 38 minutes, and then the last 2 minutes and anything in extra frames, all of a sudden it becomes real hit and miss.
Yeah, Virginia Tech is basically in the middle of the pack, smack dab in the middle in free throw rankings in the country. So sometimes you're going to make those, sometimes you're not. It kind of depends on who's at the line. When I got Ben Hammond to the line last night, he made his, and that closed out the game. I think when you look at the end of these games, Virginia Tech's making some mistakes, but they're also making some mistakes leading up to the end of the game that could prevent the last couple minutes becoming so scary. Like last night, I don't want to take away from his performance because he was awesome, but when Ben Hammond, he passed up an easy layup to try to throw it off the backboard to Toby Lowell for a dunk, and it didn't work. Lowell got fouled. He made one of the 2 free throws, but by not taking the layup, you cost yourself a point, right? Toby Lowell, 2 of his last 3 fouls were offensive fouls. One of them going for a loose ball, 90 feet away from the other team's basket. The other was an offensive foul on a screen that didn't need to happen, and they were both the right calls. And you give up possession like that, and you give them an opportunity to score. So Virginia Tech could do some smarter things during the regular course of the game, certainly last night, where those last 2 minutes probably wouldn't have even mattered. Because at that point, Georgia Tech's like, oh, we're down so much that, there's not really much we can do. But to close the game out, you've got to make those right decisions, not just in the final 2 minutes, but even before then to make it so that the final 2 minutes don't matter quite as much.
We've been a little critical of the Virginia Tech Hokies here in the fast lane with Chris Coleman of TechSideline.com. There are a couple of bigger picture positives to take away from it. At one point, this team was in a real hole in ACC play, and now they are 1 game above 500. The loss was at Louisville. You could argue that was a real hungry Louisville team because they knew what was awaiting them Monday night in Durham, maybe not to the 31-point loss variety, but they knew it. And then, of course, they were in a hole themselves, and the urgency was greater. Overall, if you said, hey, we're at the end of January, you're getting ready to host Duke, and you're above 500 in ACC play, is that the big picture thing you wanted to see for Virginia Tech, given how they started conference play?
Before conference play even started, when Virginia Tech was without Toby Lowell and Tyler Johnson, and I didn't know how long those guys were going to be out. Obviously, Lowell has come back, but Johnson is still out. I mean, that's 40% of your starting lineup right there. I said, I just want to start 3-3. If we can get to 3-3 without those 2 guys, and hopefully get 1 or 2 up and back soon, and then see where that takes you. So yeah, from that standpoint, I got exactly what I wanted because Virginia Tech was 3-3 after 6 games, and now they're 5-4. I'm a little bit disappointed because even with those issues, you could have had another win or 2. Obviously, you're not going to win every close game you play, of course. I mean, even with some of those boneheaded things Tech did down the stretch, you're not going to win all those. But let's face it, they've also had a little bit of bad luck. I mean, even with the mistakes they made down the stretch against SMU. Boop Miller still got to hit a half-court shot to win the game, and how often does that happen, right? So I'm considering what I expected, what I wanted going into conference play with those injuries. I'm happy, but it's also a little bit frustrated because you felt like they left a game or 2 on the table, even with those issues.
Chris Coleman, TSL, Tech Sideline on their socials. We're at Fastlane Ed Lane on ours, and that's also the way you can listen to the TSL podcast or Fastlane Ed Lane if you miss anything live. This Saturday, 11:30 airtime, VTR and Sports app. It's Virginia Tech against Duke. Your realistic take, is an upset possible?
Yeah, it's possible. It's just not very likely. It seems like a really strong Duke team. Their first couple ACC games, they really struggled with Florida State and Georgia Tech. I think Virginia Tech beat Georgia Tech by 6 last night. and struggled down the stretch. But I think Duke only beat them by 6-2 and struggled for most of the game. But their last 4 or 5, I think they've been really, really dominant and just blowing teams out like they did with Louisville on Monday night. That's probably not fair to judge Louisville on Monday night's game because I think they had to travel on the day of the game because of the storm, and that's just not a position any team should have to be in. But regardless, Duke is just mowing teams down right now, destroying people. I think they've won like 18 straight conference games or something going back to last year. So they're a juggernaut right now, an absolute juggernaut. Heavy favorite on Saturday against Virginia Tech. That being said, the more games you win on the road, in a row, the more likely you are to lose, right? Like you got to drop one at some point. And they don't have a great record in Castle Coliseum through the years. So yeah, there's a chance, but Virginia Tech's going to have to play better than they have at any point this year, to be honest. And I think Virginia Tech has played pretty good basketball for the most part this year, outside of the last 2 minutes of several games. But they're going to have to raise their game quite a bit on Saturday.
They will indeed. We'll find out how that goes. 11:30 airtime, VTRN Sports app this coming Saturday. Duke at Virginia Tech. Chris Coleman, TSL, Tech Sideline, and Fastlane Ed Lane, the socials and podcast platforms to remember. Chris Coleman with us here in the Fast Lane. Chris, always great to chat with you. Thank you very much. Stay bundled up over in Blacksburg, especially when the wind gets kicking up.
I appreciate it, Ed. Take care, man.
It's our pleasure. Chris Coleman to join us in the Fast Lane. When we return, coaching head scratchers. We've discussed that, and we even have some of your feedback after the Fast Five at 5-ish here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your trusted dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Your search ends at the Motor Mile. Choose from over 900 quality pre-owned vehicles, plus a massive selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. Plus the used car superstore. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles at one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got more than any other dealer in the area. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. Here's the difference. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real technology so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Is it time for a new place to call home? Moving out on your own? Perhaps your existing lease is up for renewal. Looking for a new roommate? Or maybe you just need a change of scenery. Then you need to check out brownstoneproperties.com. We have Central Virginia's largest selection of apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes. Applying is easy with our online application. Visit us online to begin your search at brownstoneproperties.com.
At the Farmers Bank of Appomattox, we believe personal banking should be as rooted in the community as you are. Whether managing your business banking, saving for your family's dream home, or juggling daily expenses with our mobile app, we offer tailored solutions with a local touch. Experience the security of a bank that knows your name and the convenience of modern technology. Visit us today to grow your financial future right here at home. The Farmers Bank of Appomattox, your community, your bank, your future.
New year can mean new changes in your life, but you know what will never change? The great deals that you get on InsaneRadioDeals.com. And we don't just feed your taste buds, but we feed your adventurous side, your hobbies, your interests, with great rates on Rise Up climbing passes, Aquatrek Adventures, and Cross-White Athletics Club. Or if you're a sports nerd like me, we got gift certificates for a SeaofRed.com and BNC Sports located at River Ridge Mall. All this and more at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Coaches! Well, is this the best you could do? Find out in the Fast 5 at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
We discussed this yesterday in the Fast Lane, but Aaron Fireball, the safeties coach, leaving Liberty to take the same position at Appalachian State. Some of this may have been in the works, and John Manson teased that possibility when he joined us yesterday. Check it out. The link is up at theseaofred.com momentarily. By the time you listen to it, it may already be there.
And guess what? We keep receipts.
They do, and so do we. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts, if you missed anything. In short, this may have well been a decision that was also exacerbated by Sean Quinn, the new defensive coordinator, wanting some of his own blood, wanting some of his own guys, and maybe just having a different philosophical approach to the way that it used to be when Kyle Krantz left as the co-defensive coordinator. He and Josh Lynham both left to go ahead and go Josh Lynham to be the linebackers coach at JMU, Krantz to be the coach at Colorado State. Ultimately, I think big picture, it's good for Liberty to have the volume of changes that they've had. Willie Korn may be replaced by Jamie Chadwell as primary play caller, but there could be internal promotions offensively. You keep Bill Durkin. I think that's the one guy you wanted to keep, even though the offensive line struggled, especially early in the going of this past season. But for Liberty, having fresh voices is not a bad thing. The internal promotions is not the worst concept. I know Dino Waits have been putting in a lot of good work there. Teddy Gallagher, the linebacker coach, especially, is one that has been deemed a rising star in this profession. Maybe that's a little bit too premature for somebody who hasn't had the full-time role, but both of them are in this spot, and this is nothing against Krantz. It's nothing as well against assistant linebacker coach Bobby Ruff, who's going to be a high school coach down in South Carolina, but a lot of these were guys that Jamie Chadwell was familiar with dating back to their time when they were together at Coastal Carolina. But ultimately, when you struggle the way the Flames have, having regressed from 23 to 24 to 25, there needed to be new blood. And it may sound repetitive, but ultimately, it's not the worst thing in the world to have that type of staff change and adjustments. Meanwhile, staff changes and adjustments in number 4. The Washington Commanders have finalized a deal with Vikings defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach Durante Jones to be their defensive coordinator. Candy Waller had her thoughts on this yesterday in the Fast Lane, and the audiograms will be up at some point at Fast Lane, Ed Lane. We're a little late on those. Please be patient with us, by the way, because snow days, schedules thrown off. So we're doing the best we can. We appreciate that. But if you missed it,
and guess what? We keep receipts.
At Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts. I think this is a bit of a stretch. The good is I like the idea of Dan Quinn stepping out of his comfort zone when he promoted internally for both the offensive line coaching vacancy and with David Blau as the quarterback's coach elevated to offensive coordinator. Yes, Dan Quinn is still the defensive mind, but having someone with some kind of other thought is not the worst idea in the world. I will generally view this as being more of Dan Quinn's defense with the vision being carried out by Durante Jones. But, Joe Witt Jr. had a lot of leeway calling this defense for the Washington Commanders. And ultimately, he had the play calling duty stripped. You saw the writing on the wall, and it regressed. But I like the idea of a little bit differently going in a different direction. A guy with Vance Joseph ties, with Mike Zimmer ties, two of the better defensive minds, not to mention Brian Flores, who, if the NFL wasn't so backward in some of their head coaching thinking, maybe you would have had a different approach to this. But for the Washington Commanders, I still like the way that they've gone about with a little bit of a different blood for Dan Quinn on the defensive side of the ball. Meanwhile, the other side of the ball, coaching news and nuggets in
number 3.
Bobby Petrino. We didn't get to this, but he is going to be the offensive coordinator for the North Carolina Tar Heels under Bill Belichick. Insert all of your jokes here, from motorcycles or train wrecks. We could call it a motorcycle wreck that this has written all over it. To the fact that it's another high highly opinionated person going into Chapel Hill and whether that will work out or not. The reality is Bobby Petrino is a good offensive mind, and there is merit to bringing someone like this on board. If there's any spot where his desires to have more power will get curbed, it's somebody who we know as in Bill Belichick, and you're going into that environment knowing what you're relinquishing. Meanwhile, speaking of Bill Belichick, a Bill Belichick friend in
Number 2.
Nick Saban's life and career will be the subject of a 6-part ESPN series coming soon. That was revealed, that nugget, during the national championship game. 30-plus hours of interviews with Saban, 80-plus hours of interviews with people in his orbit. I would love to not only see this, but I'm a Nick Saban sucker in terms of just getting more of his content. I'd like to hear what gets left out of this. I would love there to be more documentaries in this ability. And the thing that I think would be really cool is for there to be a release about this whenever Nick Saban's time passes, because I'm sure he will have some level of editorial control and say, just based on the most obvious part, which is Nick Saban being a control-oriented guy and being an employee of ESPN who is putting this documentary together. Not to mention that clearly ESPN is in bed with Saban's agent, Jimmy Sexton. But I'm still fascinated by it because there's so much richness of knowledge, how to operate systems, and how to think that go into play, even though Saban got out of the way because he didn't fully seemingly want to adapt to the modern landscape of college athletics. Meanwhile,
Number 1.
NFL coaching vacancies, by and large, they've been filled. The Cardinals and Raiders have not been filled. The Browns was just filled earlier today with Todd Monken, who seems to be an uninspiring hire. First of all, a lot of these coaching changes prompt the question,
and do what?
And more particularly,
and do what? If you're going to terminate a coach, you better be able to answer and do what? And the answer that you have needs to be at least as good as the status quo, if not better. Otherwise, what the heck are you doing?
That's Amy Trask, a friend of ours in the Fast Lane, CBS Sports NFL analyst, former Raiders CEO. And do what? It's the question that I legitimately wonder. The Steelers are in their own camp. By the way, I don't like the Mike McCarthy hiring. As one of my friends, Mark, who's a Steelers fan, put it, you go from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin, respected coaches, and then you got Mike McCarthy. Now, reality is McCarthy, I don't think was as bad as reputation was. It's hard to judge based on anything that happens with Aaron Rodgers, although maybe he wants to be together with him for another year. And then we know who runs the ship with the Dallas Cowboys. But it just seems uninspiring. But the Steelers, it was a coach resignation, not a coach being fired. They're in their own camp. But a lot of these are the same type of teams that always seem to be churning through coaches. The Cardinals, the Raiders, the Tennessee Titans. Really, you upgraded over Mike Vrabel. How'd that one turn out? The Miami Dolphins, the Atlanta Falcons, the New York Giants, the Ravens. They had John Harbaugh for over a decade and a half. Again, their own category. Buffalo Bills, about a decade with Sean McDermott, although it seems to have been an irrational decision. And of course, speaking of churning, the Cleveland Browns are in that category as well. All of this goes to say that, in essence, I'm looking at the majority of these, and none of these seem to be all that inspiring as far as coaching candidates. I get what the Giants get with John Harbaugh and bringing him on board because he provides stability for a franchise that clearly needs somebody to take charge. Kind of has that feel of James Franklin at Virginia Tech. Maybe you don't get to the promised land of a championship, but it restores respectability to a franchise where that has clearly been lacking and where that's clearly the goal. Everybody else seems like it's by and large some kind of a flyer. And that's the biggest question is, can you really replicate it? And were you better off before the hires or the firings were made, particularly in a place like Baltimore and Tennessee, where you got rid of very respected coaches? Buffalo is in that camp. I had a Buffalo friend of mine as well who said they almost had to get Joe Brady because nobody else was going to be in a spot where you thought it was really a decent upgrade over Sean McDermott. If you missed anything, Fastlane Headline, where you listen to podcasts. TJ, Thursday and Friday, we're back, weather permitting, Monday, 5 to 6 p.m. VTR and Sports app, 93.3 FM.
Thanks for listening to The Fast Lane on VTR and Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.
This is SportsCenter.